Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us. We decided to do something a little different this year, or to finish off the year anyway. So we decided to give you the opportunity to ask us anything, a very dangerous thing. So we'll see where that takes us. As usual, we will be recording this so we can listen back and see what we do. And we will be sending the email out with the recording to you, to anybody who signed up. Unusually, though, we're not going to be having live questions because we have quite a lot of questions that have been done in advance. I'm also not up against this alone today. I have various of my colleagues with me, and I also hope that you'll join in on the chat. So we'll see what's going on with that. So can I introduce Dave? Dave, do you want to give us a wave? There you go, there's Dave. He's our main enablement account manager, and he's got over 2 decades of experience in the field, which I know he doesn't look like it, but he has. He tells us he has. So he's very much in the zone for all those questions, and he will be fielding a lot of those questions for us today. Adele, oh, I can't see Adele, probably just as well. She wears many hats, although she hasn't got her Santa hat on today, but she's very much our well-being guru, so I'll be leaning on her for some of those well-being type questions today. Debbie, there we go, Debbie. Oh, no hatted Debbie either. Well, you're rubbish. But you know, she's been with us a long time. Runs our higher level assessment service and is our senior consultant. So thanks for joining us. And then top left, another one without a hat, Mr. Jones, Chris Jones.
Out, Katharine.
Yeah, well, you might have your candy stick and everything else in your office, but hat on, please.
So
there you go. That'll bring the tone down. Excellent. So Chris, in case you don't know him, is our MD. So we're going to any of the questions that we don't want to answer, we're going to ask Chris to answer. So that's the format of the day. So here we all are. So should we dive straight in with our first question? And the first one actually is going to be responded to by Chris and myself. And it was sent in. It's when refitting an office, what are the benefits of adjustable equipment, including sit-stand desks? So shall I leap in first, Chris, and then you can add something on the end?
You go for it, Katharine.
I normally do, don't I? I mean, for me, I've been working in this industry rather a long time. And when I walk into an environment that's been well designed with flexible, desking, sit-stand desking, good chairs, things like that, I know that my job is going to be easier. And I know a lot of my job is not going to be about recommending equipment. It's more about advice and how to use things. So as far as I'm concerned, very simple. The more adjustable the equipment you put in, the more people are going to be simply accommodated and adjustments are going to be easy. So I have a very simple answer for that. I don't know, Chris.
Well, I guess also, Katharine, when someone like yourself walked into an environment like that, you probably get a feeling that there's already engagement in well-being, productivity, ergonomics, all of that stuff. So it's not just that perhaps the employees are already going to be in a slightly better position anyway because of the equipment, but also that it's not going to be a big barrier when you say this person needs something a bit different, and will you be able to support them, which is obviously can be a battle from time to time, can't it?
Yeah, and do you know what? It is quite encouraging to see just how many people are taking that more proactive approach these days. So it, in many ways, with a lot of companies, it does make our life easier. So I think that's a resounding yes. Big benefits to adjustable equipment.
Yeah, well, and I think, the other thing that I was thinking on this question, particularly if you've got perhaps fixed furniture existing, or you're doing a refit, one of the benefits with thinking about it up front is that then when you do have the recommendations for an individual, the retrofit is perhaps not quite as extreme as it would have been either. So you're not suddenly got maybe one height adjustable desk in a field of other benches and stuff, which perhaps then you can't facilitate, or that the person that needs that desk has to go in the corner as a naughty corner that has the height adjustable desk in it, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, they don't feel quite so isolated because already that accommodation is already there and that understanding of people's needs. No, I think that's a good point. Okay, let's see what I've got for our next question. I think Adele, you and I might grab this one. How do we motivate staff to work using DSE as ergonomically at home as they can at work? Have you got a few thoughts on that?
Well, I think making sure that they know the benefits first. Probably most people that are engaging with us do, but perhaps your employees maybe don't realize at home is as important as when they're in the office. So I guess make sure those communication channels are open, you're explaining the benefits, you're not just telling them that, you need to tick these boxes. Actually, there is real reasons behind these, and check in on them. Is it working? Are you finding that's working? You don't want someone to start using something and then think it didn't work and move on and they haven't come back to you. So I think engaging with them is probably what I'd say initially.
I think that's quite difficult sometimes at home too, isn't it? I think that gulf between seeing somebody every day, seeing how they're working is difficult. I think what I'd like to add, I mean, you talked about, discussion and training, but I think also actually extolling the benefits of working at home, different environments and different tasks. And we'll probably come back to this in some of the other questions we talk about. So I think it is very much a dialogue rather than, oh, this is what we must do, isn't it? It's the looking after you type thing.
I mean, and we've all obviously been through the benefit of 3 years of forced hybrid working and home working anyway with COVID, and we've all learnt a lot from that period. And hopefully now, as we approach 2024, it's a slightly more long-term solutions that we're investing in. But I think certainly one of the things I've learned is there's no such thing as enforcement in a home environment. There is an element of trust, and so it's education and just kind of, I guess, making sure you're there to support and check in. Like Adele said, check in is a fantastic word for that. Is everything okay? What can we do to help better? Because we're not going to be knocking on the door to make sure your environment is okay at home. That's impractical. So there is a trust there, isn't there?
I think very much so, and I think it's something we're sort of going to come on to. Is, I mean, I actually think that hybrid working, long before COVID, I think it's a fantastic opportunity. Both for individuals and their lives, but actually also for the body and movement and everything else. So I mean, I'm quite excited about it. Although it's got to be right, isn't it? And I suppose that's where we're at. Okay, Debs, I think this one's got your name all over it.
Thank you for that.
That's all right. Simple question. Okay, simple in length. Anyway, which back care programs work?
Okay. Interesting question, because there are a huge amount of different techniques, and I think the bottom line is there isn't going to be one fit for each individual. I'm very pro core stability and Pilates. I know some individuals like the Alexander technique, which is personally is something that I've never really got on with, and I couldn't explain to you why. I think the most important thing with any back care program is that the individual's engaged, and they actually want to get on board with it. And certainly, and Katharine may agree with me, with a physio background, you often find that if you are dealing with individuals that have back issues and have back pain, they are so focused on getting rid of it as quickly as possible. The problem arises that when the pain's gone away, that's often your motivating factor. And I will hold my hands up and say I'm equally guilty of this, and my back care program isn't as good as it should be. So I think the short answer to that is potentially they can all work. It's what works for that particular individual, and everybody will have a choice as to which is best for them.
I think it very much falls into the question I used to get as a physio like yourself. Is sort of like, people say to me, what sport should I do? Yes. My answer would be, what sports do you like? Yeah, because everyone, or pretty much everyone, can be adapted to be back friendly. Yep. But if you're not going to do it, if you do it because you have to, we all know that's a hiding to not doing anything, isn't it?
Yeah, we were always told swimming was good for you. I hate swimming. Absolutely hate it with a passion.
Well, it does your hair in, doesn't it?
Well, absolutely. If I can get out and lie on a sun lounger, that's one thing, but
So it's activity, really, isn't it? So
absolutely.
All sorts of different ways.
Yeah. Movement,
whether that's gym, whether that's classes or walking at lunchtime, all those things are all contributing factors, aren't they, keeping your body moving?
Of course.
And I think, I'm probably going to cut Adele here off. She was probably ready, but also, I mean, not only physical health, but the mental health as well. You know, you can't pull those apart.
No.
And again, doing something you enjoy is good for the body, and I think it's good for the mind too.
Exactly.
So I think there's a lot to be said for it.
Yeah.
So thank you for Debs. Right, David. You thought you were going to get away with some of this, but you're not. How do we best support neurodiverse staff, especially when they're hybrid working? I think something that's coming through a lot these days.
It is. It is. We're being asked this quite a lot every time we have meetings with clients. So I think initially getting that triage of the individual, working out what they need, maybe a workplace needs assessment, work out what technology they might need, other supportive tools, but then looking at both environments, making sure that we're supporting them at home and in the workplace. So if they're using technology, will it work at both locations? You know, do they have the licensing to work at both locations? Do they need to commute into the office via public transport? Will that be difficult for them? You know, some people have anxiety when they're commuting. So the busy commute can be quite a bit of a nightmare for them. They get into the office, they're not at the best, feeling quite frustrated and anxious. So that can be an issue. So maybe adjusting the commute time, quite easy to do. Additionally, can they carry their equipment into the office as well and back home? Which we'll probably talk a little bit as we go through these questions, guys. Additionally, we're seeing a lot of hot desking going on in some of the offices, and that's then posing questions: how can we support these individuals with specific workplaces for them? So looking at the hot desking locations, quiet locations for them, away from busy walkways. Consider the environment that they're working in, and it's all your senses. It's not just sound, it's not just sight. If somebody's sat next to a canteen, it's a canteen, and somebody's cooking fish for lunch, they're going to smell it, and that's going to be a distraction. So consider all of these different things, but then looking at things like privacy panels for the desking, even mounted ones for the floor, can help with distractions, and then other things like even the noise suppressing headsets can help as well. And that can basically help individuals in workplace and at home, really. We do see a lot of quiet booths in offices now, which we are getting asked a lot with our support with these setups of new offices, which are great. But additionally, they've got to be booked. They've got to go through a booking system. And then the other thing I've mentioned about taking your equipment into work, is there maybe lockers in the workplace that they can leave their equipment in when a desk isn't available, and maybe they're going into a different location. So yeah, quite a variety depending on the individual and the requirements, really.
How are individuals feeling about discussing these topics? Because I mean, it's a relatively new thing that is accepted, isn't it? Do you find people perhaps don't talk about them readily, and it takes quite a big problem before it actually comes out? How's that kind of working?
Yeah, I think we're seeing a vast change recently. So initially, people were quite embarrassed to come forward. Do I disclose? Do I talk about it? Then when we've gone through COVID and people have been more kind of open to saying, I need help, I need support, we're seeing a change in people's kind of attitude to asking for support. And we're seeing it kind of skyrocketing, and enabling is going massive because of that. And additionally, individuals kind of my age, and thanks for the comment earlier, Katharine. People of my age.
Before you do it the other way, that's all right.
Yeah. When we were at school in the 80s, it wasn't recognised. Neurodiversity wasn't a terminology, wasn't really recognised. We're seeing more of our children, our grandchildren being diagnosed. So people are now saying, actually, I need support. I've got these symptoms, these not symptoms as much, but these different challenges, but also these strengths as well. And then they're saying, can I have support in the workplace, which is really, really good to see. But it's also better to see that the employers are actually supporting them, which is fantastic.
David, how do you find it differs, given you how many different people and companies you work with? How do you find it differs from company to company? Is there still a massive gap between those that do it well and those that don't?
Yes, yeah. So we've been approached by a lot of companies that are just starting to be more proactive than reactive. So yeah, we're finding the larger companies tend to have all the kind of divisions, so you've got all your neurodiversity groups, things like that within the larger companies. But your smaller companies that are coming on now, they're kind of being more reactive. But we're starting to see more of a progression on being proactive, which is really, really good. They're approaching us for support before there might be requests for it. Which is fantastic to see, and getting that awareness out there is key, which is what I've been kind of doing over the last 18 months, guys.
So I guess for smaller companies that don't have that big setup, actually, how we get engaged would be very different, because we would then provide all of the tools and the support and the advice for perhaps an individual versus, perhaps a larger organisation that's got a setup. Perhaps they've got other bits set up, and actually we're providing perhaps a solution or service or assessment, but perhaps not as much deep advice.
Yeah. So like pretty much like you said, Chris. So it's not, rather than being a reaction to, somebody said they've got ADHD or dyslexia, rather than reacting to it and having to then, got to go through a workplace needs assessment. What do they need? And is a full reaction to that, to a company that's basically got it already in place, maybe even can give support with just an internal triage. Maybe you can use this equipment, see how you get on. If not, you're struggling with it, we can do a workplace needs assessment, look at more in-depth needs, coping strategies, training, that kind of thing. The big ones, the big is the awareness training, the different types, whether you do it for everybody or you do it for individual groups. Line manager one is a big one, helping the line manager understand somebody may have, challenges in workplace. So yeah, those are really key, I think.
Brilliant. Excellent. I think we've got a question, a brave caller who's going to give a question. Martin, no? He's not. Okay, then fine. I will read this question out then. So this one's for you, Chris. It's rather a cheeky one, actually. Why are your products dearer than the same products from other providers? We did say ask anything, so
Katharine, yeah,
there
we
you go.
did say nothing's on the table, and we were going to be brave. So thank you very much, Katharine, and thank you for pointing that one straight at me. It's a tricky one, this, and it's always a hard topic. I mean, I think obviously pricing is always going to be different from product to product, from company to company. Obviously, we don't set the RRPs, our manufacturers do, and so prices vary based on that. And again, supply chain through the last 2 or 3 years has been quite disruptive with both shortages and inflation and all that sort of stuff. One thing I think we're quite careful of is ensuring that ergonomics and provision of DSE and enablement as well is not a race to the bottom, because if we race to the bottom on this sort of stuff, the only thing that will get harmed is then the service that we can provide around it. And I think we are all firm believers, certainly, I think within everybody on this call and everybody within Posturite, that actually it's the service that matters with our product provision. The product is only part of the story. Getting the product right, the recommendation right, getting the person engaged in using the product, getting them set up correctly, all of that stuff is so important and more important than the price you're paying for the product. So I think that's where we are. I think there's probably not a lot more to say on that. I think we try and be as competitive as possible in all scenarios and provide the best service that we can for the price. So I think that answers that question. That's certainly my answer for that question. I don't know if anybody else has got anything to add to that, or we can move swiftly on.
I think the support. I'm not sure that everybody knows, and if they don't know, that we have a fantastic DSE advice team who is available for free. Now, obviously, there has to be some sort of funding, but the reason we have that advice and the reason we do assessments is to try so people understand and we get it right, as you were saying, Chris. But I think,
Exactly.
do use all the services that we do. We do blogs and infographics, and we do have people you can talk to if you don't know what product to do, or if you've got a question. And sadly, that does need to be paid for. But I do think that it adds value. I mean, otherwise I wouldn't be here, and I've been here long enough, haven't I? So there you go. We'll see where we go. Excellent. Okay, let's move on from that one. Adele, how are other organisations getting staff back into the office? There you go. That's a real hot one. Lot in the media about that.
I was going to say there's an incredible amount in the press on and off about this, and it's not easy, really. I think people have got used to how they work. And a lot of them like it. Maybe some don't. How they are. So I'd say you need to start with talking to them, maybe lay out the expectations that's the plan. You want to encourage people to come back into the office. What do they want? But also it's important, I think people have got used to the flexibility that comes with potentially working remotely or from home. Make sure that flexibility is still important and is still a key part of bringing people back into the office. try not to have I mean, I appreciate that some workplaces maybe have to have sort of set rules or times, but if you don't need to, or there isn't a good reason to do that, try and still have that flexibility. It could be around the commute, or it could be around the days that people are going to come into the office. And with that, look at why. Is there a good reason that you're asking someone to come back into the office? If they're telling you that a particular task is easier for them to do at home, or a certain day is easier for them to be spent at home, try not to force them in on that day, but try and maybe work out what good days there are to be in the office. There's a term called anchor days, which is floating around quite a lot at the moment, and that's sort of looking at the collaboration. So is there a day where a team can be in, or someone that you work with closely, that you can actually have that face-to-face time, and use that? So it could be that actually the office is really quiet on a certain day, so it wouldn't potentially be good for people to come in on that day and essentially sit by themselves with when they could have that at home. So I think it's important to think about that. And then on the lighter note is make sure the workspace caters for it. So if you want to have more collaboration, make sure there are those spaces that people can go and do that. As well as that, have quieter spaces. I mean, Dave mentioned it before, having quiet spaces, potentially for neurodiverse staff. Other staff might also find benefit, having worked from home to come back into an office environment. It can be quite a lot, with sort of the noise and the interaction. And then maybe have some extra, like nice little things like a coffee machine. I know that's not possible for everyone, and not all workspaces can maybe have the finances to kit everything out again, but there's small little changes that possibly can do. And also keep, like I said before, check in, feedback. Is this working? Is there anything else you want to see? Make sure leadership are in. If you're wanting your staff to come in, that you check your managers in now and then, that everyone's sort of doing the same thing. But I think really just make sure that it's the right reason for people to come back in. If they can then see the benefit, I think it will make it easier for people to get their head around coming back to a workplace.
I think it's an interesting question. A lot of people are asking it, but actually, I find that a lot of people do like being in the office. I mean, I find I really enjoy being in the office. And I think, yeah, Chris, I mean, sometimes I've come up to your area and there's no desk for me. I've had to go somewhere else.
Absolutely.
And nobody's told people to be in. So I think we are, we do like that company. We do find that. So I think, we should provide the facilities so people get the best out of it. And actually, I think people will naturally find a good balance if we've got honesty from both sides as to what's working, what's not working, and how we like to be. So
it's a good point. I almost think, and this is not for everyone, because some people are, it suits them well to work from home, but people have almost forgotten some of the benefits of being together in an office and having that collaborative space. And you can see how that can easily be done. So maybe once people start coming back in, Katharine, you're right, that they might see some of the benefits firsthand.
Yeah, excellent. Actually, this feeds in actually quite nicely to the next question, which is, what are the challenges faced by many organisations for hybrid working? And I think, Debs, maybe you want to sort of feed in here.
I mean, it is a really, really interesting one, and we've seen over the years, certainly with COVID and then pre-COVID, as you mentioned, that the challenges are multifactorial. You may have some individuals that don't have the ability to have access to workstations, that you've got other factors that come into play with families working from home. So I think it's quite an interesting one. And I think the other thing is, how do we then manage those individuals when they are working from home? And certainly some of the challenges you face is, if you're going to be doing assessments for people, in what way can they be done? And I'm going to come back to the point that Adele made earlier on, and I think it's really, really important, is just sort of checking in with people and having that open communication between end users and managers. What are the expectations when they're at home, when they're in the office? What works for that particular individual? I think it is the place where I would start, almost definitely.
It's interesting. Sorry, Chris.
That's all right. I guess the other challenge, Debs, is you've got a very differing and diverse and set of line managers as well as employees, and so I think we're all aware of different styles of line management want different levels of control
Of
as well, and hybrid is a really difficult thing for some people to manage through, depending on their communication style, their management style, all those things. So it's not just about the employee. You've got the employee, the line manager, and then the management above that as well. All of it, you're conflicting control and flexibility and productivity, and I think all those three things are at competition with each other from time to time.
I'd agree with
I think
that.
that's absolutely right. I think that there's two other points. I always have to have my word in, don't I? Two other points. One is, we all sort of like grumble about regs and everything else, that tell us what to do. But actually, hybrid, you can't tell people what to do because it's so personal. And actually, that's quite a scary place to be. So we have to remember that. And I think we also have to remember that humans, we always go for that short-term gain. Okay, sometimes at the expense of something else. So we have to be forgiving, that we have to allow people to make mistakes and not judge them when they come back and go, actually, do you know what, this home working isn't working quite so well, I'd like to do a bit more, and not be judgmental, but actually just go, people will change, people will learn, we will all grow together. And that's really hard because we all like to set our stand and stick by it, but actually we need to be a little bit more flexible than that. I think sometimes, and forgive ourselves and forgive our colleagues for perhaps not always making the best decisions sometimes.
I think COVID shortened some of these time frames, but I think we've all seen this cycle over 2 or 3 decades where it's home working, it's not home working, it's home working, it's hybrid, and it does go in a cycle. Sometimes skeptically we think this might be the office builders as opposed to the managers calling the shots, but you kind of see that cycle because it doesn't work for everybody, does it? And so the new fads come along, and as I say, COVID's really shortened that time frame because we had to react quickly. But yeah.
No, it will be really interesting going forwards to see what happens. Crystal ball's a wonderful thing, but who knows what's going to appear next?
Absolutely.
Right. Another one for you, Debs. How do you assess a sit-down workstation?
Okay. In very much the same way as you would assess somebody in sitting. Obviously the first point to look at is the position of the user's forearms and making sure that we've got nice relaxed shoulders, elbows parallel to the work surface, and that's the same whether it's in sitting or standing. I think the only other thing to consider is potentially with a sit-stand desk is it going to be in a position where it can go low enough so that the end user doesn't need a footrest, can sit with their feet on the floor. Now, this one's an interesting thing for me. I'm only 5'3", and I'm lucky enough to have a height adjustable desk at home. I don't sit with my feet flat on the floor because if I get that low, I just feel I'm too low. I don't know if that makes sense to people. So I've very much got myself much higher, but I've then given myself a footrest. So I've ensured that all of those parameters that we've just talked about are in place, but my feet aren't necessarily on the floor, but they are supported. And I think it's the thing with sit-stand desks is, irrespective of how the user is working, is making sure that they're alternating and they know the benefits and the position to set themselves up in when they're in sitting, and then transferring that into standing as they alternate throughout the day. So I think very, very simply, is if you just start with the basics that we would do for an end user working in sitting, and then adapt those, keeping this bit where it should be, and then looking at the other factors, maybe feet on the floor and hips higher than knees. Hopefully that's answered that one quite succinctly.
One little trick I did, Debs, because I often found we've had height adjustable desks at the head office at Posturite for 20-something years, I think. But I think you can sometimes, you're not sure what height it should be when you're sitting.
Absolutely.
Or high. I've got a little subtle pencil mark at the top and the bottom, just so you know.
That was the next thing I was going to mention, Chris.
Now we have progressed beyond that now because we've got fancy Bluetooth memory switches and stuff. So I'm not quite as reliant on the pencil anymore. But it's really important because you sit there for a while and think, actually this isn't quite right, but I'm not sure if I'm too high or I'm too low.
Yeah. And often it is the case that, you know, if your shoulders are too high, then potentially the desk or the sitting position is too low. So that's what you need to adjust.
Exactly.
If you are feeling that you are leaning forward, or all the pressure is going through your wrists, it may well be that the desk is too high or your sitting position is too high. So that's sometimes quite a nice way to judge it. But the pencil mark, yeah, lots of people have told me about the pencil mark over the years. I have multiple pencil marks on this wall, so I don't know which one's which.
One.
To be honest.
Well, if we didn't have so many shoes, Debs, you wouldn't,
This is
because
true.
you
This
do
is
have
true.
a variety of
I
different
do,
shoes.
I do. I'm renowned for my shoes, although I don't wear shoes when I'm working from home. So,
oh well.
Can I ask, Debs, would you say a wireless headset if you use it with a sit-stand desk?
ideally, I would. I think because that then gives you more opportunity to move, and again, potentially will encourage people to alternate between sitting and standing. I think sometimes if you're wired in, you feel constricted, so you're more likely to sit for longer periods of time potentially. So ideally, but again, wireless, I mean, I'm wired. I went with wireless initially, and just the conductivity and the connection was just awful. So I ended up with this, but it's an exceedingly long wire, so I think I'm pretty sorted.
Excellent. Okay, thank you for that, Debs. Right, Dave, back to you. What tips do you have for supporting workers' well-being amongst diverse and hybrid remote workforce? So any top tips from you?
I think the key one is communication. Daily check-ins, making sure people feel like they're on track with what they're doing. When it comes down to neurodiversity, give them set kind of parameters. So if they've got certain job roles to deliver, are they on track with it? Are they keeping on track with it? Do they need support with it? And then additionally, I would say set targets. A lot of people don't think or think that targets give anxiety, but by giving a target, you give expectations, and they'll deliver more times than not, because you're giving that expectation. I need this by this time. Are you on track with it? Do you need support? Even task swapping is a good way of supporting them as well. So I say having a work buddy. So if they've got a colleague who does a similar role and they're able to task swap, but also able to talk to each other and be able to kind of communicate, because you lose that when you're at home. You lose that communication unless you're in meetings, and especially we have the bad habit of going meeting after meeting after meeting and not giving ourselves time for that quick break, that catch up on what you've just discussed. You know, what are your objectives moving forward with that meeting? You don't give yourself that time. You're straight into the next. So yeah, having that time to kind of review what you're working on is really key and important. But also rest. You know, having them rest periods, ensure people are taking them, even as much as looking away from the screen. If you can't move away from your desk, look away from the screen, and then your eyes refocus on a different distance, and you're not just getting that kind of square eyes looking at your screen all day. So yeah, I think just generally keeping in touch with people, and then creating activities, even, you know, as a team, as a group, maybe have a meeting where you're not talking about work, where you're talking more sociably, you know, even if it's just 10 minutes before the end of the day, or a quick catch up in the morning. What did you do last night? You know, what have we got planned for tonight? It's really good. It takes away that impersonal feel. And keeps people feeling like they're part of a team, which is difficult when you're hybrid working, because you're not sat in the office where you can just have a chat at the coffee machine or the water machine, that kind of thing. So yeah, communication, massive communication.
Yeah,
definitely.
I was going to add to that as well. That's the last point as well. Just don't assume that every wellbeing sort of initiative and campaign suits everyone. So it might be depending on their needs, or it's not just neurodiversity. This could be across the board. Sort of, there's a lot of different ages in the workforce too. We shouldn't assume that every method of delivering something is going to suit everyone, whether that be training, or even if you do a wellbeing newsletter, or think about how that person's going to receive it. What's the best way of them getting that information, and maybe tailor it. Don't do the same thing for everyone.
Well, Adele, you and I discuss this quite a lot for Posturite, don't we? In terms of and this is the difference between equality and equity and all that sort of stuff, that actually doing something for people working at head office, in order to be fair, and we always like to be consistent and fair, what do we need to do for everybody else? And it doesn't always necessarily mean it's the same thing. And then this comes into, we've got a diverse, we've got a geographically diverse workforce, we've got ages, we've got neurodiversity, we've got everything, and that, but it's not that one size fits all in terms of the solution for it, which is hard, particularly Adele, you are so conscious of it, trying to make sure that we have covered everybody, which I know you are very passionate about, but it is hard.
Yeah.
But as long as it's on the agenda, that's the first step, isn't it? Okay, let's make sure we've thought about everybody, even something as simple as the Christmas parties. Has everybody, for our wide geography, has everybody been included in a regional area or whatever social things going on? Because it's quite easy to suddenly forget somebody.
Yeah.
I think this feeds into the next question very well, actually, which sort of what are the best ways to promote healthy workstation awareness and practice amongst staff? I mean, it's a very similar sort of answer. I mean, I'm going to sort of start off by saying, lead by example. We need really the managers engaged, taking care of themselves, and so it's seen as acceptable to take care of yourself. When you manage meetings, do we make sure they're not back to back? Do we say to people, right, I just want to have a minute's silence. I want you to put to bed what you've just done, and I want you to think about what we're just about to do, and then let's start the meeting. Giving people, that's not only going to make us good for our mental health, but actually good for our business too. And then perhaps halfway through, do some exercises, and you find if you start fiddling on do exercise, other people start joining in. So leading by example, both from good work practices, I think really tells a tale, doesn't it, for everybody. It's acceptable. I mean, Debs will probably be nodding along with me with this, but the number of times I've done assessments over the years and people say to me, oh, I can't take breaks, I can't do any exercises. My manager won't allow it, and I tootle off and I go and speak to the manager and I go, they say you can't. What do you mean? Of course they can take breaks.
Absolutely.
Everything else. So I go, well, would you come over with me and just
reassure?
And it's a fear, it's a perception, it's not a reality.
Absolutely.
And
it's an assumptive no, isn't it?
It is.
I'm not going to ask, so therefore it's done.
Absolutely. And I think you're right, Katharine, leading by example. And I think it does throw up challenges, of course it does, but we have this preconceived idea about how we should behave when we work with computers, and it's sat there like some demented hobbit over your workstation. It's about change. And I've had people say to me, oh no, well, management won't take that on board. I think I came up with this radical idea, which I might have pinched from you back in the day, about introducing Mexican waves in open plan offices, which some clients have been really excited about, and I've had a couple of people who've taken it on board and it's worked really, really well. But a lot of people look at me like I'm, a bit doolally, to be perfectly honest with you. And they say, well, I don't think that would be perceived as particularly professional. It's change. It's the mentality that's got to change. And I think you're absolutely right. Is everybody else working towards the same aim, which is getting people engaged, getting people up, getting people moving.
Yeah, it's making those things habit, isn't it? Rather than just something you do. Like we could say you could run a campaign or do something about that, but it's actually about then taking that and making it, like Katharine's saying, if you're doing something a part of a meeting, make it regular. Don't do it just one time. And I think building those habits or making that change, like you said, Debs, is the hardest bit. But once it's there,
of course,
it becomes easier to keep
it
in the forefront of your mind.
Introducing it into the regular one-to-one, so a bit like trying to open a one-to-one with how are you rather than how's work, but also have you got everything you need to be healthy and working, that sort of stuff, making it ingrained in part of, so it doesn't have to be forced, it's just an automatic part of the conversation each time is ticked off. And
let's also say, I mean, managers need support too, and actually support from their staff. And being able to say, I'm not having a great day, could we, it not only looks after them, but actually shows the individual that it's okay for them to say, actually, I'm not having a great day either. Yeah. So, I mean, I think we put a lot on managers, but it is key. I don't think we can get away from it. Absolutely. Is, leading by example, living what you believe, isn't it? And yeah. Excellent. Okay, now on to something slightly different. We've got a question here. Should carpal tunnel syndrome be a RIDDLE reportable occupational disease for office workers? The HSE guidance currently suggests that CTS, carpal tunnel syndrome, is related to the use of vibrating tools, but we are seeing more cases in office-based workers. I've read that it's not always possible to pinpoint the cause of CTS, but could DSE be a cause? Oh gosh, well that's right up my street, as it were, and I'll try not to spend too long on this. For me, if anybody diagnose carpal tunnel syndrome or any upper limb disorder, it's really important we identify what the underlying cause is. And certainly I have seen office workers who have been diagnosed with that and that sort of thing. Just for reassurance, I have actually reported carpal tunnel syndrome for a worker, a riddle. So yes, I think absolutely. And if it gets a spotlight to get things looked at. It was a long time ago though. And I'm not sure that I've seen any DSE working practices that I think would cause a riddle carpal tunnel syndrome. And I certainly would hope that we would pick them up before it became a really big problem. So I think really it's, yes, we need to shine a light on where these problems are. Is it about the diagnosis name, that type of thing. So yes, if we've got concerns, we should report it. Particularly if somebody's got a severe carpal tunnel, they probably are off work for more than 7 days anyway, so they probably does fall under the riddle type banner. Just to really put a spanner in the works though, there is quite a lot of research out there that says that carpal tunnel syndrome is not related to office work and keyboard. So the jury is out. If somebody has pain and somebody is suffering, we need to get to the bottom of it. And I think most of our employers will actually step in before it becomes reportable, or I would hope they do anyway. So I hope that kind of answers your question. Quite a complex, quite a logistical type one, but hopefully that provides some sort of answer. Does anyone else want to join in on that one?
I think that one's got you all over it, Katharine.
Yeah,
I perfectly. I'm sure. Yeah. I think we know who's asked the question as well. One of a really good customer of ours. I'm sure they'll get in contact with you.
I'm sure we can have a longer debate on it exactly. if they'd like to talk about it. So that'd be great. Right, now I'm afraid, Dave, this one's for you, and it is quite a long one, but I am going to read it out for the benefit of everybody on the call. Hot desking has created many opportunities and challenges, including some employees with neurodiversity finding it challenging not to have a workstation assigned to them, and other employees having specific requirements that need to be catered for. For example, sit-down workstation arrangements or dual monitor setups instead of one large monitor, or a noise-cancelling headset. Many employers now use booking systems enabling employees to book a workstation in advance. However, some booking systems do not advise that desks have been adjusted for certain members of the team. Assigning a desk is not seen as the most practical option, as the employees are only in the office 2 or 3 days a week. In this situation, how do we support individuals with neurodiversity in a hot desking area assigned seating? And what should we advise the organisation? I think it's nice and clearly put, but I think it needed to be stated.
Yeah, I think we've covered it slightly on our previous answers, guys. Yeah, it's a difficult one because it's how many sit-stand desks do you have to the amount of staff that require them? What teams are going to be coming in with those individuals that need those sit-stand desks? It's so long's a piece of string in a way. Very difficult. So yeah, I think going right back to maybe the first one is maybe we should have that adaptability for everybody rather than the singled out individuals. So maybe more sit-stand desks should be available. The booking system has been working for some larger clients of ours. You've just got to look at the long distance booking system, have it so that you're not last minute planning meetings and bringing everybody in. Look at the longevity, maybe 3-4 months ahead, and stick to those meetings where you can. And that's already good for neurodiversity anyway. Sticking to a meeting, they know the plan of action, they know what to expect. There's less anxiety about that meeting coming up by sticking to that plan. So having that long-term booking system is a benefit. And it's going to help with other things like parking availability, you know, which has always been the nightmare before COVID. Everybody couldn't get it. You had to get in early to get a car park. So yeah, it's now become the desk situation rather than the car park, where we're all struggling. I need to get in because I need that desk. Now, adjustability for that individual, that's probably back to the pencil situation, maybe mark in the desk, or have the memory type desk. So you've got 2 settings, one for sitting and one for standing. And then certain adjustments will be for different individuals. Maybe they've got a wheelchair and they need to go under the desk and then adjust it back down. So there's different situations. But also, we mentioned earlier, lockers is really good. Everybody wants the personal space anyway. Having your own cup, your own even little plant out, that kind of thing, it makes your desk feel a little bit more, like your environment. So having a locker where you can put them in while you pop home and do the rest of your work at home, makes it feel a little bit more of a nicer place to come into work. Again, we're back to wellness then. So yeah, kind of how long is a piece of string? Difficult. Each situation needs reviewing differently, I would say. Yeah,
David, this one actually certainly got me thinking, and more personally than professionally. Is that you will know my 15-year-old, my second oldest, Joe. He's autistic. He's obviously at school at the moment, but actually, in prepping for this, actually, whether it's 3, 5, 8 years time, whenever he finishes education, he's going to be in this environment. And I started to think about what that means for him, having someone that you know and love, and thinking about how they will kind of adapt to these scenarios, whatever the workplace looks like in that number of years. And its structure was what it always, right, for Joe, for us, it's always about structure and actually hybrid and hot desking and all that sort of stuff. How on earth do you make sure that they're successful in that chaotic office world that we live in now?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think by having that long-term booking system, he could book up the whole year.
Yeah,
that's always going to be my desk. That's always going to be my location. I know that's an area that I feel more comfortable in. I'm not facing a canteen. People aren't too close to me. Often they are, having people too close to you can be an issue as well. So yeah, I think having a long-term booking system's kind of got to be the plan.
And I guess it's not always a direct correlation, but it's quite common that those with conditions like autism perhaps are better planners and will look ahead slightly more. So actually, dear old Joe will probably have Tuesday in the corner for the next 365 days, and everybody else that's lastminute.com doesn't matter as much to them anyway, and so they can fit in. So I guess it's making sure as the workplaces adapt that these things are still there and thought about, so that the structure can be maintained for those that crave it, and doesn't need to be there for those that don't need it.
And I think it'll help the employer as well, Chris. So you've got more people booking these long-term areas, then maybe more are needed. So, they can see that actually they've been booked up. We need more. Let's get more put in, so all those are available for them. Yeah. So, 100%.
Really interesting question.
Excellent. Have we got Anna available to ask the next question?
Yeah, I am here.
You're here. Hi, Anna.
You're lucky because I'd actually lost my voice yesterday, so it's going to be touch and go. But no, I'm here. I'm here, everyone.
Excellent, Anna. Well, the floor is yours. Please ask away.
So our company's grown quite a lot. So just for context, we had 55 people this time last year. We're now at 88 and we're looking at 125 by March. I just want to know how to promote workspace wellbeing when we're split across 2 offices. So we've got 1 office in London and 1 office in Stockport. But we also have quite a lot of remote workers as well. And one of my things is obviously to try and promote workplace wellbeing. So just any tips on that would be fabulous, guys.
I think that's heading towards Adele. Thanks, Anna.
Great. Yeah. I mean, this is something I think about a lot as part of my role. We have a similar setup in that we have remote workers, home workers, and an office. And to be honest, I don't think we've got it quite right yet, but there are sort of some things that I think you can try to do. We've mentioned before, with social connections are strong, so try and make sure that maybe if you have remote staff, I think it was Dave that mentioned it before, having maybe a weekly call or a check-in, some point where you're not talking about work all the time. It might not sound like a real strong wellbeing thing, but it really is, you know, engaging and building those relationships between staff. Don't talk about work for half an hour. Talk about what you're going to do at the weekend. Talk about get to know people better, and that in turn has its own benefits. You know, you kind of find out where people are in their life. It maybe makes you aware of other things they might be going through. But it's also nice. It's nice to know. As well as that, something that we've trying, and it's coming a lot up in a lot of businesses, is having champions throughout the business. So when you do have sort of wellbeing initiatives or campaigns, or you want to do some training, you have people in all different areas. So perhaps some remote workers, someone in one of your offices, someone in the other office, who are working with you to spread those ideas and talk about those promotions. And so those people can be the ones that mention it in meetings, or, oh, did you know we're doing this, or lead by example. So I think the champion schemes that people are running are seeing some real success, and it also means that you might have better feedback from your staff at what is or isn't working for them. There's someone else to go to that isn't maybe just one person owning it in the business. And again, and this is something Chris mentioned before, making sure that everyone's included in some way, even if it's not the same thing.
Yeah, the two different offices might have two very different cultures, requirements, different sets of people, and so maybe it's different for each one, Anna, but perhaps it's about making sure both have got the opportunity, or that you can do some swaps between them, or whatever, you know. But I think it's that fairness of treating people how you want to be treated, but it doesn't mean everybody needs precisely the same thing.
Yeah, definitely. It's like one size fits all isn't the opportunity, isn't the thing to go for. Perfect. Thank you.
I found theme days are really good, especially with people being quite remote. Having a theme, we're going to wear red today. You know, maybe you know, attach it to, you know, a particular week that's going on, like neurodiversity, that kind of thing. We've recently done Christmas Jumper Day. Having a theme gets everybody wanting to get involved in each office. Even if they don't feel like they want to be socially involved, it gives them that option, you know, to feel like they're getting involved. Like we've got Christmas hats today. I wasn't on that list.
Well, I was luckily it happened to be in the cupboard. So.
I recently visited. I recently visited a client, and they do every fortnight. They do free lunch day to get everybody in the office, and it's the most attended day of the month. So yeah, things like that. I mean, my previous employee, we did a wellness where we actually all got delivered ingredients to make a pizza, and we all then had a social in the evening where we all went on camera and made a pizza, which was fantastic, you know, and we catered for the different dietary requirements. But yeah, it was fantastic what people came up with, and just going into the kind of social environment rather than it all being about work really makes a massive difference, especially well-being.
Just one other thing to mention, and certainly where I think we've done really well on sort of togetherness and getting the whole company together during this year, is we nominated the Stroke Association as our chosen charity this year, and we have done so many activities throughout the year, being it quiz nights and sponsored bike rides and all sorts of other bits, and everybody in the business has got together for it. It's been astonishing. Obviously, it's been great to raise some money and awareness for Stroke Association, but actually the benefits for us, for me, have far outweighed what we've done for the Stroke Association. Even it's been fantastic for everyone to get engaged in. So having a common focus and a goal on giving as well could work, Anna.
Perfect. Thanks so much, guys. That's really helpful.
Excellent. Now, time has run away with us, so I'm afraid we're going to go. This will have to be our last question. And I suppose it works in a way, sort of. So what are our tips for enhancing productivity that also supports good health, mental and physical? I think it's quite a nice one to end up on, you know, something to look after people, but also the business. So I don't know, Adele, Dave, have you got any thoughts on, you know, top tips for productivity and also good for the people too?
I'm going to jump in first with technology, guys. For me, technology, I'm a techno geek. Even just like the Dragon software, you know, the speech-to-text software, people see it as an assisted tool, and it is. It's fantastic for physical. It's fantastic for neurodiverse. but it's also a productive tool. You can't type as quick as you can talk. You know, it's just as simple as that. And you can also then put scripting in there that makes things like, I can say my works address and it'll type out my full works address. So I can put in there all sorts of different scripting that makes my productivity really, really quick. So it takes me less time to do things that often, you know, it will take a lot longer. So yeah, and I enjoy using the product because I'm a bit of a techno geek. It's, you know, one of those things. So yeah, for me, technology, I would say.
And I've always been a bit phobic from speech recognition, and I think it comes from a kind of both not wanting to hear your own voice is one of the things, but also maybe 10 years ago, the products were not brilliant. And so I used to get so frustrated going, oh, correct that. And I was like, no, I'm fed up with it. And you reach the type. But I think particularly the last 12 to 18 months, it has catapulted in the accuracy, not just in the words, but the context as well. It actually knows what you're talking about, not just the words.
Yeah, we all use Google voice search. We all use Alexa, play music. You're actually using voice commands, you know. So it's becoming more and more natural to everybody.
It's more accepted, isn't it, in your own self as well?
Yes.
You don't feel, I used to feel a bit stupid talking to the computer. I don't know why, because but you need to get used to it, don't you?
You do.
It's funny. I'm on the opposite end of the scale, David. I'm a bit of a Luddite. I mean, I can break any technology, but I use voice activated software. I don't actually like Alexa, but I use voice activated software, and I also do a lot of voice memos because my typing is rubbish and my spelling is rubbish. So actually, I do little voice memos for myself, but also if I've got a lot of information. For my family, but also for business. So I absolutely agree with you on that one, sadly, but don't quote me on the fact I'm into tech, please.
It's becoming a bit of a speech recognition answer, but I think if we go on to what ChatGPT is doing now as well, where you are now having a conversation and what's coming next, because they're all starting to compete on this, you know. Amazon, Google, Facebook, and Microsoft are all now racing to who can do it quicker and better, not just having a chatbot that you can chat to and it sounds like a human, but connecting to the real world. So sending that email for you, replying to stuff just by talking, and suddenly you've got a PA sitting on your shoulder the whole time, where the productivity suddenly gets recognized. You know, that really starts to light it up.
On fire. Definitely.
But I would put a bit of warning on that. I mean, as of course you'd expect it from me to say, it's really important. It needs to be personal too. You know, there's a difference between using the technology to enhance and relying on it to do things automatically without any thought. And I think it's that middle ground, isn't it, that makes the difference.
Well, absolutely. And corporates need to navigate that themselves anyway, with policies for how employees use it, as well as the employees being sensible with it as well. Yeah. So I think that's number one on top tip. They stole the show there. Who else is going to be?
Well, I was going to say mine's a bit more directed perhaps at the managers. So I would say work with your staff to find out their motivations, find out their strengths. Again, we've mentioned this before, not everyone's the same and people do work differently. So we can't expect that everyone's productivity is going to be increased in the same way. So again, communicate with your team, focus on strengths. I think, you know, I'm very pro focusing on strengths as a tool to get the best out of people. So I think talk to your team, work out what works for them, and then try and help them and tailor their working day around that.
I think actually learning from some of the tools we use with the neurodiversity, you know, how do people want to be communicated with? What do they like? I think we should all have that. I think we should all we should learn from, you know, what suits some group of people. Probably those strategies help us all. So let's do this learning.
We're learning more and more. The spectrum isn't just at one end, is it? And it stretches all the way along. And as these tools become better for everybody, they're going to be useful for everybody, neurotypical as well as diverse.
Yeah. So I think a bright future, actually. So I think on that note, I'm going to sort of wind us up a little bit. I'm so sorry if we didn't get to your question, you know, those of you that are out there today, but we really did appreciate all of them. And it caused us to stop and think, and actually maybe even sort of think about how we might approach things differently next year within Posturite. So really, really appreciate you talking to us. And please feel free to reach out at any point if you think there's something we could do to help. Then we're happy to listen. We may or may not be able to be of support. thank you to Anna for being brave enough to come on and show your face and share with us where you're going. So really appreciate that today, Anna. Thank you. Now, our next webinar will be in late January. So if you're on our mailing list already, you'll be notified of that. If not, please sign up and we'll make sure you get an invite. And I think unless there's anything from the panel, no, that's good. I'm going to wish you all a happy Christmas and wish that you have a very positive, happy and fulfilling new year. And we look forward to working with you and seeing you all in 2024. So
Yeah. Happy Christmas,
happy
everyone.
Christmas.
Thank you,
Merry
Katharine.
Christmas.